They spent an enormous fortune building an entire network of artificial islands. This is ground, which only a few years earlier did not exist at all. Now, slowly, the ocean is taking it back. How you build an entire network of islands from nothing, and what happens when the ocean slowly starts winning them back, before inviting the viewer to find out together. Before it becomes ground people can stand on, it starts as sand pulled directly from the ocean floor itself.
Every component here has to reach open water before any of it can start becoming land. This concrete has to survive decades of direct saltwater contact without ever quietly breaking down.
Every single batch is tested against decades of exposure before it is ever approved for use. Alongside the concrete, the machines that will actually move enough sand to build an island are also being assembled in parallel. Before it moves a single grain of real sand, and this pump has to prove it can move enough of it fast enough to actually matter. Each section here will eventually help hold an entire artificial coastline firmly in place.
Before a single pump ever starts running, they already know exactly what kind of seabed they are actually working with.
Every vessel here is heading toward open water that very soon will not be entirely open anymore. Through open ocean, the pieces of an entirely new landscape make their way toward the one place that is about to change forever.
The material has finally arrived, and now it has to become something that has never existed here before, which is solid ground.
Before a single pump ever starts, they already know exactly where this new landmass needs to take shape.
The very first step is not building anything at all, but rather pulling material up from the ocean floor itself.
Sand which spent thousands of years resting on the ocean floor suddenly finds itself somewhere completely new.
For the first time, something breaks the surface of the water that was never there before this moment.
Loose sand is not ground yet, and that every single pass here compacts it just a little more toward true stability.
This is the very first wall meant to hold this new land against the very ocean it came from.
Every bolt here has to hold against water that has, historically, always eventually won in the end.
Kilometer by kilometer, a boundary begins forming between the ocean and the very land it just gave up. Before it is trusted with a real storm, and every section has to survive one that was built specifically to test it first.
Hundreds of sensors, just like this one, will quietly track exactly how this new ground settles for decades to come.
One island alone was never truly the plan, since this was always meant to become an entire network.
Even before either island is finished, and they are already being connected to each other as part of the larger plan.
That for the first time you can see exactly what this entire network is actually going to look like once complete.
The entire reason for this network was never just land itself, but always about the ships that would eventually come to use it.
Before a single ship ever docks here, and the structure has to prove it can hold real cargo weight without hesitation.
3 islands now break the surface of water that used to be entirely open in every direction. Not every structure here is about shipping, since some of this network was always meant for studying the ocean itself.
Not every meter of coastline faces the same risk, which means not every meter receives the same level of reinforcement.
Halfway through construction, this stretch of ocean already looks completely different than it did just a few years earlier.
This is exactly the kind of moment the entire design was originally built to survive.
When the storm finally passes, the work simply continues exactly where it led off before the interruption. There are now 5 islands, where just a few years earlier there was nothing but open ocean stretching in every direction.
For the first time, you can finally see it as what it was always actually meant to be, which is not 5 separate islands, but
Behind every connected island, an entire hidden infrastructure network actually runs beneath the causeways linking them together. This is an entire working port built on ground that simply did not exist when this project first began. This is the very first ship to ever dock at a port that used to be nothing but open water. Every structure across the entire network gets carefully monitored the moment real weight finally arrives for the first time.
Somewhere on this network, an entirely different kind of work now begins, which is studying the very ocean this land was built out of.
Even at golden hour, it remains easy to forget that every single piece of this network used to be somewhere else entirely. Every single inch of this network still passes through very ordinary and very careful human hands, despite its enormous overall scale. Working this close to open water on ground this new means safety here is never treated as something optional.
Almost immediately, the sensors pick up something small, which is a very small amount of gradual settling that remains well within what the original design had expected.
With the 6th island now complete, the entire originally planned network finally exists all at once for the very first time.
After all of this, which includes dredged sand, marine concrete, and years of dedicated construction,
Even now, the smallest detail is never rushed, no matter how far along the overall project has already come. One by one, the very machines that built this entire network now finally leave it behind for good. The fleet that built this entire network now scatters back out into the open water it originally came from. A year in the settling remains small, but it is no longer quite as small as the very first readings originally suggested.
Rather than simply wait and see, they instead choose to add more eyes directly onto the exact thing they are already watching closely.
With more data, the overall pattern becomes clear, since this is not random but rather gradual, predictable.
instead of simply ignoring the emerging problem, and they go back and actively reinforce what has already been built.
The reinforcement does not stop the settling completely, but it does slow it down in a way that is genuinely measurable.
This was never going to be a problem they solved just once, but rather one they always knew they would have to keep watching closely.
Even with the ongoing monitoring, the network keeps working every single day, exactly as it was originally intended to.
That rather than pretend the ground will never move at all, and some structures are simply built from the start to adjust to it instead.
The structure does not need the ground to stay perfectly still, since it simply needs to be able to move with it a little over time.
And not every section can simply be reinforced. Some sections eventually just have to be rebuilt entirely from scratch.
This time it is built differently, informed directly by exactly what the ocean has already taught the engineering team along the way.
Years later, the network is still here, which means it is not unchanged, but it is still genuinely working as intended.
An entirely separate team arrives specifically to provide an honest assessment of exactly where things actually stand across the network today. The findings are not simple, since some areas need continued attention, while others have genuinely and fully stabilized over time.
Rather than hide the findings, the entire assessment gets made fully available, including both the good news and the ongoing concerns together, honestly.
It was never a story about a mistake, but was always instead a story about building something ambitious.
Ships still arrive here exactly like they always have, whether or not most of them actually know the full story unfolding beneath their feet.
The research station keeps doing exactly what it was originally built for, which is studying the very same ocean that continues slowly reshaping the ground around it.
Most people crossing here will never notice anything unusual at all, which is exactly the entire point of the design. The sections they went back and specifically fixed are still holding up exactly as originally intended by the engineering team. Somewhere in this network, someone is still watching closely, exactly the way they have been doing since the very beginning of the project.
Whatever comes next gets built with everything the team has already learned, fully built directly into the process from day one.
Most visitors come here for the scale, but the ones who stay a little longer leave understanding the whole story, Within just a few years, what once seemed impossible and then briefly uncertain simply becomes just another place where people quietly go to work. This is one network built through years of gradual settling and maintained by a team that never stopped watching closely enough to keep it standing firm.
The certification itself is not unconditional, since it comes with an ongoing list of exactly what still needs to be closely watched going forward. Instead of keeping the data private, and they instead choose to make it fully available to anyone who genuinely wants to check it themselves.
The people who actually work here receive exactly the same honest answers that everyone else in the room does as well.
Despite everything that has happened, the actual daily function of this place has not changed at all, since ships still come and the port still works exactly as intended.
The research station's original work grew naturally to include studying the islands themselves, which became an unplanned, but
the people watching this network now were not even part of the original team that built it, which means the vigilance itself simply gets passed steadily forward. At night, none of the network's ongoing questions remain visible at all, since it simply looks like exactly what it is. This is not a story about something built perfectly, but rather a story about something built ambitiously and then honestly maintained over time.
Most of them still leave genuinely impressed, not despite the honest parts of the story, but specifically because of them.
This is one network representing one honest story about ambition's subsidence and everything it genuinely took to keep the two carefully balanced together.
Every single sunrise still rises steadily over ground that once was not truly ground at all.
This is not just dredged sand and concrete, but rather what happens when ambition meets an honest and ongoing answer from the... It was built from the ocean, slowly reclaimed by it, and still for now standing exactly where they originally put it.
This video is created for education and informational purposes using advanced AI tools and human creativity. All concepts, scripting, and storytelling are independently developed to ensure originality. Visuals and animations are generated or enhanced using AI technologies such as VO3, Meta AI, and Grok AI, while final editing and post-production and completed using CapCut and other professional editing tools. No external created content has been copied or reused. Any semblance to real-world environments, factories, or processes is purely coincidental. All scenes shown in this video are digitally created and do not represent real footage. This content is produced with transparency and follows YouTube monetization guidelines.